at Chetwood, we have a really clear purpose around making customers better off through the use of technology. From the outset, we wanted to make sure that the business we were building was set up not only to use open banking, open finance, but actually to consume lots of different data sources. We recognize that customers of the future will want to be able to control and choose how they use their data. And also to be able to select a much broader use of partners, if you like, as opposed to kind of this traditional sense of kind of using that high street bank for all of your product needs. And so our business really from the outset was focused around creating an API-based model that would allow us to use that data to deliver a better customer experience.
We want to allow customers to have access to all of the data that they might need or want access to in the Starling app, even if it be from other providers, and to use that for a purpose. Starling's been on board with this, right from the offset. I would say we were even ahead of the pack in many cases. There's only 4 million users of open banking. Now, I'm from Starling. We've got several million customers. So of some of the other fintech banks in the space, I mean, that's less than the number that the fintech banks have convinced to switch without the use of these open banking products. So it really goes to show that for whatever reason, open banking in its current state is not providing enough innovation to really convince people to switch over and use these services. And I think there's a lot of the groundwork has been done, as I say, and this is really the very crux of our frustration. The groundwork is there. We can now share the data, but what are we going to do with it, and how are we actually going to make it useful to customers? And I think that's the point at which we'll get customers in droves to come and try out these new services. But just giving access so that they can view their data in a different app, it's just not cutting it for customers today. What I suspect is actually that 4 million there is actually a subset of people who are already using a fintech bank, actually. So it's people who are already quite digitally minded, quite ahead of the curve, and then are aware of this and think, oh, I'll give that a go. And I don't think that's necessarily the direction we want this to go. I think what we'd like it to be is that it really gives everyone, no matter who you bank with, the opportunity to access something better.
Clearly, one of the things we've seen with open banking in its early stages is that it has tended to be adopted more by those prime users, so people who typically have better access to credit and cheaper credit. Our business model is actually about helping those that are less well served by the market, and so we see this and other data sources as a really key way to do that. Open banking can provide massive opportunities there in terms of really helping those customers not only access credit, but also get access to cheaper and fairer credit.
The people who know about open banking are often the people that are already very, very well informed. They already know that they've made a good financial choice in going to this provider or another. The people who don't know about open banking are sometimes the ones that really need to know about it and need to know that this stuff is there to make their financial lives better. And we just need to get on with that bit now. And that's, I think, where our frustration has been with open banking in, say, the last 12, 18 months.
We're hearing wanting to serve the underserved, wanting to give better deals to people. And so I suppose there is some frustration with open banking. Has it delivered everything that it promised it was going to deliver? Most probably not yet.
Legacy systems is a big deal, I'd say, to the banks. And this is probably a major thing that's slowing them down in terms of how quick they can expose their data. I mean, some banking systems will be running on COBOL, of which you probably won't be able to get developers easily. It's a big issue.
I think having had the experience over time of working with some of the established organisations, there is a sympathy there for them, because they have systems that have been built over years, and actually making a change is quite difficult. So with the new entrants, we do have and two great new entrants on this call who are able to make those changes a lot faster than the incumbents. So that is one thing. But they have to, in order to keep up, they have to change. If you come onto one of these new platforms, it'll be minutes, absolutely minutes, and they'll do everything else for you, and it's totally verified. But what you will know, or what you will find out, is that in the established organisations, they've got 3 or 4 floors of people manually doing that.
One of the things our model is very focused on is this partnership model. So we work with partners like Money Supermarket, ClearScore, Totally Money, and others. And we effectively recognize that customers want to be able to go to those marketplaces, and that they can help provide them with that element of choice, and really help them to get a broader access to credit products generally. And so we use data not only through open banking, but also from partners like those to actually enable those decisions, and ultimately to make better credit decisions and broaden the opportunity. Almost a third of customers that use sites like that get no offers for credit products. Many of our customers who come through those channels are very emotive about the fact that Martin Lewis himself has recommended the products that they've taken. That is how strongly they feel about that experience. And so those platforms have actually a really amazing opportunity, and one which many of them are embracing, to really position themselves as the partner of choice for open banking, and to then enable customers to be able to see access to greater products through a number of fintechs who, like ourselves, would be effectively partnered with them and integrated with them in terms of that data share. And from a selfish perspective, we could try and get customers to come directly to Chetwood to do that. Our view actually is that marketplace model gives consumers more choice, and so ultimately that feels like a better place for customers, a better outcome for customers ultimately.
These marketplace platforms, we know on this call that you cannot pay Martin Lewis to advertise your product, and he makes that very clear. And because you can't pay him, people do trust him that he has done some good due diligence and has the consumer's best interests at heart from that. So the trust in all of this is absolutely paramount.
My students, very technical students, they understand data governance, they understand security, they've built APIs, they've built front end, back ends, they've got quite a bit of experience in software now over the last few years. And yet when I talk to them about open banking, they were like, oh, I don't like the idea of that. I don't like the idea that my data, my banking data, is now going to be used by third parties. And I'm like, well, you're in control of it, you'll give permission. But they very much felt like that was an obstacle to them. An assumption there that people actually want to manage their own data and want the control of what to do with it. If you don't fully understand what that means or where that goes afterwards, then it can be worrying. If the banks look after it for you, then maybe that was the same. And I think that can be a bit of a blocker.
I think, yes, trust in banks might be a barrier, but actually, if you don't trust banks, then you might want your data to be somewhat more democratized, and therefore have other people with access to it who can make decisions, so that you can compare the decisions the one's making versus the other. So it could actually really help with trust in the banking space as a whole. Obviously, the spirit of open banking at its heart, and I really hope that it does hope to get to achieve this one day, is really that there's just full transparency, for people in terms of their data and the data from other providers. I feel that at its heart will allow customers to reach a place of trust, but there are these barriers to get over to get there.
I was associated with Starling, so I'm slightly biased, and I am a customer of Starling, but I love the fact that they remind me on a regular basis to give my confirmation and re-consent to my bank being connected to my accounting software. That doesn't happen if you have a big, one of the traditional bank accounts. So they respect it and they make it easy, and therefore it is much more trusted.
Who is going to create the use case for consumers to really sign up to open banking? And we've seen that if consumers want access to credit, that is a strong use case where customers will be prepared to share their data in order to get access to credit.
I have to say, I'm not a supporter of completely frictionless. I think we need to have an element of friction. So, we've seen, and we're not going to come on to buy now, pay later, but where that is made very easy, that's getting lots of people into lots of trouble.
But I guess the question for me is it the big banks that are going to go and do that? Or is it the fintechs that are going to create those propositions? Because really, for me, it always comes back to, this is just technology unless there is a reason for customers to do it. And I think we can all see there's lots of opportunity here, but somebody needs to create that compelling proposition that really, really gets customers happy to sign up and share data. And I don't think we've got that really yet. And I think that's why we're seeing such low numbers of take up. We haven't found the kind of the crux of something that's exciting and significant enough really for people to bother and to try it. I guess switching and moving consumers to better products, better rates, whether that's savings accounts that at the end of a fixed period, you'll end up in a space where you don't need to go on a results page and search for the best offers because you're using an app that's already told you that your savings rate is suboptimal and that you should be on a better insurance product and potentially a better broadband supplier or energy provider at the same time. And actually that you've got something that sits in the middle of all of that is really automating and taking all of the effort out of that process for you. I think ultimately with open finance, you would want to get to a place where it's broader even perhaps than finances. Perhaps it's broader than in terms of things like energy bills and broadband bills and other payments that we can obviously see from a transactional perspective going out of accounts. So it's actually quite easy once you have that data to be able to understand if people are being under or overcharged. It does come back down then to how easy is it for consumers to sign up and use these products. How much work are we expecting the consumer to do up front to make this app work? How much do they have to do? And as always, that needs to be as simple as possible to get maximum benefit. If you can imagine something that is digital, that is doing that in an automated fashion and is scouring the whole market for the best deals, and that's where I think it probably won't be a bank, whether it's a fintech or a high street bank. It probably won't be a bank that can best win in this space. Ultimately, it will be someone that is more independent than that and so has that greater level of trust and is genuinely encouraging customers to switch products more. Now, a lot of the banks won't like that, clearly, for the reasons we've outlined. And personally, from a Chetwood perspective, we're quite comfortable with it because we think it's our job to make sure we've got the best product for those consumers at that point in time. So bring it on, I guess.
Some of the new entrants will say bring it on because
absolutely.
they will want that transparency. They've spent a lot of time building the trust with their consumer, and many of them were coming to market with we're not going to cross-sell, upsell or mis-sell. So I think they're possibly in a place where they might, like yourselves, say, look, you know what, bring it on, we're ready for it. We want to be challenged by our consumers. It's our consumers who are going to keep us true to providing the best product.
The killer use case, because I think this is the thing that we're all looking for. We've talked a bit about credit in the consumer space, but I think we should also talk a little bit about the SME space, because actually I think there are lots of opportunities there. SMEs today are still, even though there's more opportunity in the market, they're still underserved in many ways, and actually they still work with so many different siloed systems in the office. They're having to go from the bank to the payroll system to the pension system to this, that and the other, and actually they are all systems, they're all IT systems. So actually maybe the killer use case isn't in the consumer space, maybe it's in the SME space. I wouldn't be surprised if the killer use case starts on the SME side.
And I do agree with Harriet's point on SME, and I think certainly through COVID that's one of the things that I've read about. We don't look after SME, but it is something that people are talking about, that there has been more adoption from SME businesses on the back of general digital adoption through the pandemic. And I think you're right, Harriet, there's a lot of opportunity there because clearly there are plenty of needs not being served.
I'm agreeing that SMEs might be driving this because small businesses have very little resource to get online, to automate their accounts, to automate their tax, to making their tax digital. We love all of these things that the government is trying to put out there, automating the expense process, automating the pension contributions and the payroll. These are all things that I juggle with normally on a Sunday afternoon. So being able to do that in a very trustworthy, easy way, and obviously I've selected many of the products that are out there in the fintech space to help me with that. So maybe that is absolutely right. This drive could come from SMEs, and let's be really understanding. It's the SMEs that drive the economy in the UK. These are the lifeblood of our economy. The adoption of digital for the benefit and the improvement and increasing productivity of the UK economy could be a real positive out of this if we build on it.
I don't think it's open banking that's been encouraged them to consider digital options. It was actually the COVID pandemic, because they just had no other option at this time. It was an opportunity for us to offer those services to those SMEs who perhaps would never have made that leap, or would have taken longer to make the leap. So it was a very good thing for us. I hope those customers would say it was a good thing for them, because they're enjoying their experience now. Really, the pandemic did speed up this whole digitalization process for SMEs. And now I hope some of those SMEs will consider open banking propositions, and maybe some more will be developed to help some of those day-to-day problems.
I don't think they need to consider open banking. I think they just need to consider an ease of doing business.
There's probably lots of places that something could be created that's compelling enough to get consumers or SMEs to use. I just don't know. I don't think we've seen it yet. I don't think it's out there yet. I don't think any of us can look at something and say they've got it, their best place to deliver that. It feels like that's still waiting to be delivered against. I think a lot of non-financial services companies could benefit here too. So we're dealing with a lot of partnerships who are ultimately looking to help their consumer bases to build their consumer base in terms of loyalty and trust by being able to offer their groups of customers financial services products. Now, they don't have the data clearly that the banks have, because they've not been in that part of the market. But open banking is, if we can fix it from a consumer perspective, some of those businesses could be the ones actually to come up with that killer app or that killer proposition, because they're already serving a group of customers. They already have had a base of customers who they've built up over many years in many cases, and they're already meeting a series of needs for them. This is about strengthening and adding to that, and actually open banking could be a really important enabler.
Yeah, I do think so. And I think the reason that would be helpful is because it would take the onus off just the banks. That they seem to be in this world where, it's open banking, the banks are going to solve it all over there because they've got loads of data about transactions. But actually, transaction data on its own, siloed away from everything else, isn't very useful. Actually, it's linking it with everything else is where we can do the really clever stuff. So I think it encourages the rest of all of the industries to get on board. And actually, the APIs that we're talking about, they already exist in all of these other industries. They're all using technology every day that use APIs. So it doesn't need to be something alien that only financial services are using. So it would really take the onus off just the financial services sector and encourage everyone else to get on board. And it's only when everyone's on board that we're going to see big change here.
I think it could be useful to have a digital identity for especially now we're looking at moving towards lots of what we do in a virtual space. So I think a digital identity would be good in that sense.
As a business, it would massively help, because actually, part of our challenge is about identifying customers digitally. We don't have tons of people doing manual work. We made a decision right at the beginning of setting up the business that we wanted to be as automated and digital as possible, and that allows us to offer those best rates, whether that's on our lending products or on our savings products. And so having a way to do that is reliable and common across the industry would be excellent. And ultimately, many of the banks and fintechs end up doing the dropouts of those journeys manually, or not at all. And customers, as a result, have either a more clunky version of the onboarding journey or none at all. And in many cases, they just have less access to financial services products if their data is less easily identifiable. So yeah, I think there's loads of great customer benefit from it. And I think there's loads of business benefit too.
Customers being able to see their data in the app isn't enough. We need to get to the next thing now, using that data, actually using it to make people's financial lives better. That's the bit that we want to move on to. The first stage of the movement is kind of done. People can share data. And the next thing is, what are we going to do with it? So I think actually it's a case of getting some of these groups that we've been talking about in the room, not just the banks over here, not just the fintechs over there, get them all in the room and actually start to say, what can we do if we put this data with that data? What can we do if we add this in the mix? What can we do if we do that?
I'm hearing frustrations, not just from people on this call, but across the FinTech Wales membership, to make it broader, fairer, more inclusive. We have to be a little bit faster, and the CMA9 and the Open Banking Institute, I know they're doing all the right things and they're trying, but we're bringing super tankers into a Mediterranean where we've got speedboats already off and running, and we've got to find a way of doing it possibly a little bit faster. I think the important thing in this, and I think what we're seeing a changing shift. Partnerships, collaboration, ecosystems, working together to solve problems. Many people on this call, we won't know what the problems are unless we go out and talk to the consumers, whether they're SMEs or whether they're individuals. So I think there is an element of going out and hearing what the problems are on the ground, rather than sitting, sort of in labs somewhere thinking we can be innovative, to actually solving those problems.
I think it's absolutely about us working together on it, but then I think it's about getting back down to that, what problem are we solving for the customers? And when I say customers, I mean both retail consumers and SME. But for us, doing that primary customer research, staying really close to what is the problem, what is the need we're trying to solve for, that's the key for me. And whether that is a killer app or whether it's something much more simple, I don't know. But I think there's finding the really strong use cases from a consumer perspective is the thing that will really get traction.
It does come down to UX and user experience. In terms of Cardiff University, if you want to build these apps, then Software Academy to help you build the APIs. We've got the Data Science Academy. And really, we need the businesses, we need you guys to feed in projects so our students can learn within that sector. We want to be a FinTech hub, and Cardiff and Wales is very well placed for FinTech.
I think we've all said it several times. I think it's collaboration and ecosystems, and that's what FinTech Wales is here to do. We work with Cardiff University, we work with Chetwood, we work with Starling, we work with a multitude of others. We listen to consumers, whether they are retail or they're SMEs. We look at those problem statements, and I'm delighted to say we're just about to open season 2 of our Foundry, accelerating and fixing those problems. So it's really important that we are at the hub of these things to bring together academia, businesses, and the regulators and the governments, which we do to solve these problems. And I'm delighted to say that actually in Wales, I think we're really ahead of the game. We are establishing ourselves as a globally recognised FinTech hub of excellence.